The monsoon rains hammered against the tin roofs of Saigon like 1,000 angry drums. But inside the Golden Lotus Bar on Tudo Street, American music drowned out the storm. It was 1968, the year the war stopped pretending to be winnable, and Sergeant Michael Torres sat nursing a warm beer, trying to forget what he'd seen in the Mekong Delta just 3 days earlier. That's when he saw her. Linh Nguyen moved between the tables with a grace that seemed impossible in the chaos of wartime Saigon. She wasn't like the other bar girls who worked Tudo Street, desperately flirting with GIs for money and maybe a ticket out of hell. There was something different in her eyes, a quiet dignity that the war hadn't managed to break. Michael was from East Los Angeles, a Mexican-American kid who'd grown up knowing what it meant to be treated as less than. He joined the Marines to prove something, though he was no longer sure what. 3 tours in Vietnam had shown him that war didn't care about your reasons for being there. It just consumed you. Linh approached his table, her English careful but clear. "You want another beer, GI?" "No, thank you," he replied, surprising himself. Usually he drank until the memories blurred. "I'm Michael. What's your name?" She hesitated. In Saigon, real names were currency you didn't spend freely. But something about this American soldier, maybe the sadness in his eyes that matched her own, made her answer honestly. "Linh. It means gentle spirit in Vietnamese." Their conversation that night lasted until the bar closed. She told him about her family's village outside Hue, destroyed during the Tet Offensive, about her father, a school teacher, killed for refusing to choose sides, about her younger siblings she was trying to keep alive in a city that devoured the desperate. Michael told her about growing up in LA, about the gangs and the poverty, about joining the military to escape, but finding himself in something worse, about the friends he'd buried, the children he couldn't save, the nightmares that waited for him every time he closed his eyes. If you're already hooked by this true story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you've ever heard about the Amerasian children of Vietnam. Subscribe because this story goes to places history tried to erase. What began that rainy night in 1968 would become one of thousands of similar stories across Vietnam. Stories of love born in war, of children who would be called bui doi, dust of life, of a legacy both nations would spend decades trying to forget. Over the following weeks, Michael found reasons to return to the Golden Lotus. He told himself he was just looking for conversation, for a reminder of humanity in a war that seemed designed to destroy it. But the truth was simpler and more dangerous. He was falling in love.
Linh felt it too, though she fought against it. She'd seen what happened to Vietnamese women who got involved with American soldiers. The judgment from her own people, who called them traitors and prostitutes. The false promises from GIs who swore they'd return and never did. The mixed-race babies left behind when the Americans inevitably went home. But love in wartime doesn't follow logic. It blooms in the ruins like wildflowers through concrete, stubborn and desperate and achingly brief. They began meeting away from the bar. There was a small Buddhist temple near the Saigon River, partially damaged by shelling but still standing. The monks who maintained it didn't judge. They'd seen too much suffering to waste energy on prejudice. In the temple's quiet courtyard, surrounded by incense and prayer, Michael and Linh built their own small world. He taught her American songs, Sam Cooke, Otis Redding, the soul music that reminded him of home. She taught him Vietnamese, laughing at his terrible pronunciation, delighting when he finally mastered a phrase. "Aim yêu anh," she whispered one evening. It means, I love you." Michael pulled her close, breathing in the jasmine scent of her hair. "Aim io ang," he repeated, the words clumsy but sincere.
Captain Richard Bradford was the kind of officer who made Michael's life hell. A career military man from Alabama, Bradford viewed the war through a lens of racial and cultural superiority. In his mind, the Vietnamese were barely human, gooks who couldn't be trusted, whose lives had no value beyond their utility to American interests. He'd noticed Michael's absences, the way the sergeant requested permission for off-base time more frequently than before. Bradford assigned military police to follow him. The report came back within a week. Sergeant Torres was involved with a Vietnamese civilian, a bar girl from Tudo Street. Bradford smiled. This was exactly the violation he needed. "Sergeant Torres, you're confined to base pending investigation," Bradford announced during morning formation, making sure everyone heard. "Fraternization with enemy civilians is a violation of General Order No. 1. You'll face court-martial." The word spread through the barracks like wildfire. Some of Michael's fellow soldiers expressed sympathy. Hell, half of them had Vietnamese girlfriends. But the official military position was clear. Romantic relationships with Vietnamese civilians, especially those working in bars, were prohibited. They represented security risks, moral failures, breaches of discipline. Michael managed to get a message to Linh through a Vietnamese laundry worker who came on base. They met one last time in the temple where they'd shared so many evenings. "They're sending me home," Michael told her, his voice breaking. "Court-martial, dishonorable discharge. But that's not what matters. What matters is keeping you safe." Linh's hands trembled as she held his. She'd known this moment would come, but had hoped for more time, more memories, more nights pretending the war didn't exist. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. The world seemed to stop. The distant sound of artillery, the constant background noise of Saigon, even the rain, it all faded into silence. "What?" Michael breathed. 2 months. I wasn't sure, didn't want to tell you until I was certain." Tears streamed down her face. "What will happen to us?" Michael pulled her into his arms, his mind racing. A child, his child, growing in the belly of a woman he loved in a country tearing itself apart? "I'll come back," he promised. "After the discharge, after everything settles, I'll come back. We'll get married. I'll take you both to America." Linh wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But she'd heard these promises before, from other girls whose American soldiers had sworn eternal love before disappearing forever. "Promise me," she said, looking into his eyes. "Promise you'll try, even if it takes years, even if it's impossible. Promise you won't forget us." "I promise," Michael said. "M.U. Ang, forever." They spent that night together, knowing it might be their last. They made love with the desperate intensity of people who understand how fragile everything is, how quickly it can all be taken away. Drop a comment and tell me what you think happened next. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because this story takes an even more heartbreaking turn. Michael was shipped back to the United States 3 weeks later. The court-martial was swift and brutal. Dishonorable discharge, loss of benefits, the permanent stain of military disgrace. He returned to East LA with nothing. No job prospects, no GI Bill, no respect from a country that had sent him to fight and then discarded him like trash. But he kept his promise. He wrote letters to Linh at the Golden Lotus Bar, sending money when he could scrape it together, making plans for how he'd bring her and her child to America. The letters went unanswered. He didn't know that Linh never received them. The bar had closed after a Viet Cong bombing. The neighborhood had been evacuated and relocated. His letters went to an address that no longer existed, returned by military postal services marked "Addressee Unknown." Linh, meanwhile, watched her belly grow and faced the consequences of her choice.
Her family, when they learned of her pregnancy, disowned her. No decent Vietnamese man would marry a woman carrying an American's child. The neighbors whispered. Children threw stones. She was marked, branded. A living symbol of collaboration with the enemy.
Part 2. The years crawled by like wounded animals. In East Los Angeles, Michael Torres worked construction during the day and drank himself unconscious at night. The dishonorable discharge meant no decent jobs, no veteran benefits, no respect. His family tried to help, but they couldn't reach past the wall of guilt and grief he'd built around himself. Every day he thought about Linh. Every day he wondered about the child he'd never met. He sent more letters through every channel he could find, the Red Cross, military chaplains, even a private investigator who took his money and delivered nothing. Vietnam might as well have been on another planet. The war ground on, consuming everything, making communication impossible. In Saigon, Linh struggled to survive with baby men. She couldn't work in the bars anymore. No one would hire a woman with a mixed-race child. The baby's features made her situation impossible to hide. His skin was darker than hers, his eyes rounder, his hair with a slight curl that marked him as Con Lai, half-breed. She found work washing clothes for wealthier Vietnamese families who pitied her enough to pay, but never enough to live with dignity. She moved into a cramped room in Cho Lan, the Chinese district, where landlords asked fewer questions. Every dong she earned went to keeping Minh fed, clothed, alive. The Vietnamese called children like Minh bui doi, worthless, unwanted, the physical evidence of American presence that everyone wanted to forget. These children belonged nowhere. Too American for Vietnam, too Vietnamese for America. Living reminders of a war that brought nothing but suffering. But Linh loved her son fiercely. She told him stories about his father, about the gentle soldier with sad eyes who had promised to return. She taught him English words she remembered, hoping that somehow, someday, they might need that language. "Your father loved us," she would whisper as Minh fell asleep. "He didn't abandon us. Something kept him away, but he loved us." Minh grew up fast in a city that had no mercy for children like him. By age 5, he understood that he was different, that the other children's cruelty had reasons rooted in his appearance. By 7, he'd learned to fight, to steal when necessary, to make himself small and invisible when violence erupted in the streets. If this story is breaking your heart, hit that like button and comment below. Do you think Michael will ever find his family? Subscribe so you don't miss how this unfolds. The war reached its inevitable conclusion on April 30th, 1975. North Vietnamese tanks rolled into Saigon as helicopters evacuated the last Americans from the embassy roof. The world watched on television as a nation fell, as people who'd allied with America scrambled desperately for escape. Linh tried to reach the embassy. She'd heard rumors that Amerasian children and their mothers might be evacuated. She pushed through the panicked crowds with 6-year-old men clutching her hand, fighting toward the embassy gates. They were turned away. Too many people, not enough helicopters, not enough time. The guards looked at her with something between pity and contempt. Another Vietnamese woman with an American child. There were thousands. They couldn't save everyone. "Please," Linh begged in English. "His father is American, Sergeant Michael Torres. He promised to come back for us." The Marine guard shook his head. "Lady, every woman here says that. I'm sorry, we can't help you." The gates closed, the helicopters left, and Vietnam transformed into something new and terrifying.
The reunion happened 3 days later. The social worker arranged it, bringing men to the hospital during visiting hours. Michael had rallied with the news, the doctor stunned by his sudden improvement. Hope, they said, was sometimes the best medicine. Min walked into the hospital room carrying his mother's photograph and 18 years of questions. He saw the man in the bed, thin, sick, so much older than the soldier in his imagination, and recognized him instantly. The same dark eyes his mother had described, the same sadness that never quite went away. "Dad?" Min whispered, the English word feeling strange and wonderful on his tongue. Michael looked at his son, alive, real, standing in front of him, and broke down completely. "Min, oh God, Min, I looked for you. I tried. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there." Min crossed the room and embraced his father. Two strangers connected by blood and loss, bridging 18 years of separation in a single moment. They held each other and cried, for Linh, for the years stolen by war and bureaucracy, for the life they might have had. "Mama never stopped believing you'd come back. She told me stories about you every night. She said you promised." "I did promise. I tried to keep it. I sent letters, I searched, but everything was chaos. The war ended, and I couldn't find you. I thought you were dead. I thought I'd lost you both." "She died in 1980 in a camp. She made me promise to find you, to come to America." Min pulled out the photograph. Linh at 19, beautiful and hopeful, taken before the war destroyed everything. "She kept this. She kept your memory alive." Michael took the photograph with shaking hands, touching his lost love's face. "She was so beautiful, so brave. And you, look at you. You survived. You made it here. She would be so proud." Over the following weeks, as Michael fought to extend his life, they filled in the gaps. Min told him about growing up in Vietnam, about the discrimination and poverty, about his mother's strength and love. Michael told him about the court-martial, the years of searching, the guilt that had consumed him. The doctors gave Michael months, maybe a year if he stopped drinking and followed treatment. But something miraculous happened. Having his son, having purpose, having someone to live for, it changed everything. Michael fought for his life with the same determination he'd once fought in the war. He got better, slowly, painfully, but unmistakably. The liver damage was permanent but stabilized. He moved in with Min and they built a life together, father and son learning each other, making up for lost time. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it challenged what you knew about history, then like this video, share it, and subscribe. These are the stories that change how we see the world. Michael and Min's story became part of a larger movement. The Amerasian Homecoming Act brought approximately 25,000 Amerasian children to the United States between 1987 and 1994. Each one carried a story like Min's: abandonment, survival, desperate hope. Some found their fathers, many didn't. Some American fathers welcomed their Vietnamese children, others denied paternity, embarrassed by this evidence of their wartime relationships. Some Amerasians thrived in America, others struggled with language, culture shock, and the realization that America wasn't the paradise they had imagined. But they all shared one thing. They were proof that war's consequences extend far beyond battlefields and peace treaties. They were living testimony to connections made in chaos, to love that defied military regulations and cultural boundaries, to children who paid the price for their parents' choices. Michael spent his remaining years making up for lost time. He taught men about his Mexican-American heritage, about the family back in L.A. who slowly accepted this surprise grandson. He shared stories about Linh, keeping her memory alive, honoring the woman who'd raised their son alone against impossible odds. He also became an advocate. He joined organizations helping Amerasian refugees, spoke at veterans' meetings about the children left behind, pushed for more resources for these young people trying to build lives in a strange country. "We created these children," he would say at meetings, his voice firm despite his failing health. "American soldiers, Vietnamese women, we made families in the middle of war. Then we abandoned them. The least we can do now is help them survive." Michael flourished in ways his mother had dreamed. He learned English, attended community college, and got a degree in social work. He specialized in helping refugee children, using his own experience to guide others through trauma and adjustment. He met and married a Vietnamese-American woman, a refugee herself, who understood his journey. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl whom they named Michael and Linh. Comment below if you think this story should be taught in schools. And if you haven't liked this video yet, do it now. This history matters.
Michael Torres died in 1995, 7 years after reuniting with his son. He was 59 years old. At his funeral, Min read a letter his mother had written before she died, a letter he'd carried with him to America. "My dearest Michael," it read in Vietnamese, Min translating for the gathered mourners. "If you ever read this, it means I am gone and our son has found you. Do not grieve for me. Do not blame yourself for what happened. We made a choice to love in a time when love was forbidden. That choice gave me the greatest gift of my life, our beautiful son. I want you to know that I never stopped believing in you. I never believed you abandoned us intentionally. The war separated us, but it could not destroy what we had. Every day I saw you in our son's eyes. Every day I remembered your promise. Take care of him. Love him enough for both of us. Teach him about his American heritage, about your family, about the father he never knew. But also teach him about Vietnam, about me, about the mother who loved him more than life itself. Tell him that love is worth fighting for, even when the world says it's impossible. Tell him that he was wanted, that he was loved, that he matters. Tell him that his existence is proof that even in humanity's darkest hours, beauty can emerge from ashes. I love you, Michael. I forgive you, and I thank you for giving me our son. Amerasian, forever. Linh. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. Veterans wept for the woman they'd never met, and the children their brothers in arms had left behind. Min's wife held their children close, understanding how easily this story could have ended differently. The social worker who'd connected father and son smiled through tears, grateful she'd been part of this reunion. Today, Min Torres runs a non-profit organization in Los Angeles, helping Amerasian refugees and their families. The walls of his office are covered with photographs. His mother as a young woman, his father in his Marine uniform, his own children growing up American, but connected to their Vietnamese heritage. He speaks at schools, at veterans events, at immigration hearings. He tells his story not for pity, but as testimony. Testimony that the children of war matter, that love across boundaries is real and powerful, that even systems designed to keep people apart can't stop human connection. The Amerasian community remains largely invisible in American consciousness. These children, now adults, now parents and grandparents themselves, carry the legacy of a war both nations preferred to forget. They're living bridges between countries that were once enemies,
embodiments of complexity in a world that prefers simple narratives. Many never found their fathers. Some fathers never acknowledged their children. The reunion stories, like Michael and Min's, are rare, precious, almost miraculous. But every Amerasian child who survived, who built a life, who refused to be defined by the word WWII, dust of life, is a victory. Every one is proof that humanity persists even in inhumane circumstances. Before this video ends, I need you to do something. Like this video if you believe these stories matter. Comment and tell me what you learned today. Subscribe, because history like this deserves to be remembered, deserves to be shared, deserves to shape how we think about our present. The legacy of Vietnam's Amerasian children teaches us uncomfortable truths. That war's casualties aren't just soldiers, that policies designed to prevent fraternization can't stop love, that abandonment has consequences that echo across generations, that both America and Vietnam failed these children, marking them as unwanted in both nations. But the legacy also teaches us about resilience, about mothers like Linh, who loved their children fiercely despite society's judgment, about children like men who survived unimaginable hardship and built meaningful lives, about fathers like Michael who, despite their failures, tried to make amends when given the chance.
Ming's children, Michael and Linh, are growing up in a world very different from the one their grandparents knew. They learned about Vietnam in history class, about the war that shaped their family's story. They're proud of their mixed heritage, comfortable in their hyphenated identity. "My grandmother died in a prison camp," young Michael said during the school presentation about family history. "My grandfather was dishonorably discharged for loving her. My father grew up as dust of life, unwanted by 2 countries. But I'm here, my sister's here. We're proof that love is stronger than hate, that family transcends borders, that even when everything tries to tear people apart, connection finds a way." That's the real story of Vietnam's Amerasian children. Not just tragedy, though there was plenty of that. Not just abandonment and suffering, though that was real too. But ultimately, it's a story about the stubborn persistence of love in hostile conditions, about people who chose connection over conformity, who paid terrible prices, but created something beautiful anyway. This is the story they didn't teach you in school. This is the story that complicates our neat narratives about the Vietnam War. This is the story that shows love as an act of resistance. If you made it this far, you're part of keeping this history alive. Subscribe, share this video, tell someone about the Amerasian children of Vietnam, because the world needs to know that even in the darkest times, love finds a way. Even when everything is designed to keep people apart, connection happens. Even when authorities try to erase what occurred, the truth persists in the hearts of those who lived it and in the lives of those who descended from it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about stories that matter. Now go forth and remember, we all carry the consequences of our choices, but we also carry the possibility of redemption. The Amerasian children are proof of both.